7 of the current drivers on the 2025 F1 grid have entered the sport thanks to the Red Bull Junior team, 8 if you count Jack Doohan. Although I think the vast majority of them will forever be cursing the Austrian energy drinks brand for the lifelong insufferable pain they have caused them. So that got me thinking about I'll be talking about the drivers that joined the Red Bull Junior team in the 5-year period between 2010 and 2014. So without further ado, starting off this video is Daniil Kvyat. The Torpedo joined the Red Bull family in 2010 during his debut year of single-seaters, where he competed in Formula BMW Europe. Kvyat finished 10th in the standings, the third best rookie, but struggled compared to his teammate and fellow Red Bull Junior, Carlos Sainz, who finished 4th. For 2011, Kvyat competed in both Formula Renault 2.0 Northern European Championship and Euro Cup Formula Renault 2.0. Finishing 2nd and 3rd respectively. Yet again, Danny finished behind Sainz in both championships. Not ideal if he wants to beat Carlos to a Toro Rosso seat. The Russian did another year in Euro Cup Formula Renault 2.0 for 2012, and this time he finished one place better, in 2nd, losing out on the title by 10 points to Stoffel van Dorn. Kvyat also competed in and won the Formula Renault 2.0 Alps series, narrowly defeating Norman Nato by 3 points. This success had given Kvyat an advantage in the pecking order over the other Red Bull juniors going into 2013, where the Russian moved up to GP3. He would race for Christian Horner's Arden team alongside Sainz, meaning this would be a big test for Red Bull to see who would be a worthy successor for Daniel Ricciardo at Toro Rosso. Kvyat only went and won the whole championship, which resulted in the Russian being promoted to Formula 1 for 2014 with Toro Rosso. Kvyat's debut year in F1 was decent. He scored points on debut in Australia with a 9th place finish and would score more points on 4 further occasions throughout the year as he finished 15th overall in the standings. Despite finishing below his teammate Jean-Eric Vergne, Kvyat earned himself a promotion to the main Red Bull team to replace the outgoing Sebastian Vettel for 2015. His first year for the Austrian energy drinks company was actually fairly good. He unfortunately was racing in probably the worst Red Bull in the last 15 years, but despite that, Danny beat his teammate Ricciardo with a P7 in the standings, achieving 1 podium along the way. 2016 was a completely different story though for Kvyat. He was infamously replaced by Max Verstappen at Red Bull after just 4 rounds into the season, despite achieving a podium in China. He spent the remainder of the season at Toro Rosso, where he scored 4 points, got constantly beaten by Carlos Sainz, and finished 14th in the standings. This meant 2017 was going to be a massive year for Kvyat, where he had to perform in order to stay in the sport. Unfortunately, things didn't go to plan for Daniil. He finished 19th overall, 10 places below Sainz, and was replaced before the season was even over by Pierre Gasly. This left Kvyat without a drive for 2018 and out of the Red Bull family. So Ferrari snapped him up to be their reserve driver. The Russian clearly did a great job as a reserve driver, as Helmut Marko's opinion on him completely changed and saw him return to Toro Rosso for 2019. Partly because Dan Ticktum couldn't gather the necessary super license points for the seat. Kvyat did fairly well in 2019, well enough to be retained for the following season. He achieved a podium in Germany and was actually performing better than his teammate Alex Albon before he moved up to Red Bull. However, Gasly did quite comfortably beat Kvyat once he stepped back into the Toro Rosso. This continued into 2020, which saw Kvyat lose his seat to Yuki Tsunoda for 2021. Sadly, this was the Russian's last outing in Formula 1. Since then, Danny has dipped his fingers into a few different pies. He was Alpine's reserve driver in 2021. He has entered quite a few NASCAR races over the years, tested in Formula E many times, and has switched over to endurance racing now, where he competes with Lamborghini and IMSA. So as I'm editing this, Lamborghini just announced that they're going to be quitting endurance racing, so I guess that leaves Kvyat to be unemployed now. The next driver after was Carlos Sainz. Now I could just copy and paste the first part of Kvyat's Red Bull Junior team career, as Carlos Sainz did the exact same thing. Joined in 2010 in his debut year of single-seaters, competed in Formula BMW Europe, then competed in Formula Renault 2.0 NEC and Euro Cup Formula Renault 2.0 in 2011. Red Bull could have been a little more creative for their careers back then. Sainz did pretty well, finishing 4th in Formula BMW and then won Formula Renault 2.0 NEC in 2011, whilst finishing as runner-up in the Euro Cup Formula Renault 2.0. The Spaniard then stepped up to a plethora of F3 level championships for 2012 in FIA F3 European Championship, Formula 3 Euro Series and British F3. Sainz did fairly well, finishing 5th, 9th and 6th respectively. 2013 was set to be a massive year for the Red Bull Juniors, as a Toro Rosso seat was going to be opening for the following year. So Carlos made his debut in GP3 with Christian Horner's Arden team alongside fellow Red Bull Junior Danny Kvyat. So this would be a straight shootout for the 2014 Toro Rosso seat. Unfortunately for Sainz, he finished down in 10th, whilst Kvyat won the championship. Not the strongest year for Sainz. For 2014, Carlos competed in Formula Renault 3.5, a junior racing series which used to be highly respected expected before it ceased to exist after they allowed Roy Nissany to finish 5th in the standings. Sainz would go on to win the championship ahead of fellow Red Bull Junior Pierre Gasly in 2nd, and fellow countryman and good friend of Carlos, Roberto Merhi, in 3rd. This result earned Sainz promotion to F1 with Toro Rosso for 2015 to race alongside Max Verstappen. The Spaniard had a decent rookie campaign where he finished 15th, although a few places behind Verstappen in the standings and almost 3 times fewer points. Sainz was retained at the Italian-based team for 2016, which was a much better year for him. He comfortably beat his teammate Daniil Kvyat and finished 12th in the standings. Carlos was again retained for 2017, which saw him improve again this year, 9th in the championship, and was loaned out to Renault for the final 4 races of the season, which is where he also spent the 2018 season at. Sainz scored 1 point less in 2018 than he did the year before and finished 10th in the standings. Another strong year, but was beaten by his teammate Nico Hülkenberg. Sainz then officially left the Red Bull family after 8 years at the end of the season as he joined McLaren for 2019. His first year in Papaya was very good. Sainz achieved his first podium in Brazil and finished a career best so far of 6th in the standings. Carlos remained at McLaren again for 2020 and again finished 6th in the standings with a career best finish of 2nd at Monza after narrowly missing out on the win to Pierre Gasly. Sainz then made the move over to Maranello in 2021 and spent 4 seasons there, achieving 4 wins in the meantime. The Spaniard finished 5th in the standings for 3 of those 4 seasons and beat Leclerc in 2021. Sainz has now moved over to Williams in 2025 and has shown why he's one of F1's top drivers. Quickly, can everyone subscribe please right now? Thank you. The next driver is Carlos Sainz's current teammate, Alex Albon. The Thai driver is probably the person here with the most interesting time in the Red Bull family. Alex joined the Red Bull Junior team in 2012 and left it at the end of the year. This was during his debut year in single-seaters, where he competed in Eurocup Formula Renault 2.0 and Formula Renault 2.0 Alps, also against fellow Red Bull Junior driver Daniil Kvyat. Albon had a pretty rough year as he finished 38th and 16th respectively in those championships. It's very important to note that 2012 was the year his mother was arrested and sent to jail, which Alex has described before as the hardest year of his life. This proved as it had affected his results on the track. 2013 got a little better, but still not where Albon should be. He returned to the Eurocup Formula Renault 2.0 championship and improved to 16th in the standings, beating both his teammates, but still not a strong result. Albon returned again to the championship for a 3rd season in 2014, and this time he did a lot better, finishing 3rd in the standings. He continued his strong form by moving up to European F3 for 2015 and achieved a 7th place in the standings, 1 place behind his good friend George Russell. There were many other strong competitors in this championship that year, with Charles Leclerc, Lance Stroll, Antonio Giovinazzi, Felix Rosenqvist, Jake Dennis, Nick Cassidy, Max Günther, Callum O'Keeffe, and Mahavir Raghunathan. 2015 was also the year Alex's mum was released from jail, which was a big boost for him mentally and personally. For 2016, Albon switched over to GP3 and had a very strong year, finishing as runner-up behind Charles Leclerc. Alex continued his upwards trajectory by moving up to Formula 2 for 2017 with ART. Unfortunately, his year was stunted after Albon broke his collarbone in a cycling accident. He missed the round at Baku but returned afterwards, but really struggled to get back up to speed for the remainder of the season. Before the accident, Albon had scored points in all of the first 3 rounds of the season, so it was going very well for the Thai driver. During the off-season, Alex was struggling to secure a drive for 2018, but luckily he managed to sort out a race-by-race deal with Dams in F2. Not an ideal contract for him, but it worked out quite well in the end, as Alex finished 3rd in the championship. He'd managed to sign a deal to race with Nissan in Formula E for the following year. That was until he received a phone call from Helmut Marko later on in that year, and the rest is history. Albon's Nissan contract was terminated and he signed for Toro Rosso for 2019 as he was welcomed back to the Red Bull family. His first half of the season was fairly strong with 5-point scoring finishes. This was good enough for Red Bull to swap him round with the struggling Pierre Gasly for the second half of the season. Albon had a pretty decent stint at Red Bull. He narrowly lost out on a podium in Brazil after he was spun round by Lewis Hamilton, but regardless, he was retained to stay with the team for 2020. Unfortunately, he struggled big time compared to his teammate Max Verstappen. Shock. Who would have thought? He scored 2 podiums at Mugello and Bahrain and started fighting the AlphaTauris at the Nürburgring and claimed they race him so hard. Alex Albon was subsequently demoted to test and reserve driver for 2021 and was replaced by Sergio Perez. During his year out, he raced in DTM, finishing 6th overall. Pretty good, but struggled compared to his teammate Liam Lawson, who controversially finished 2nd. Albon returned to F1 in 2022, this time with Williams, which is where he has been since. The next driver is Stefan Wackerbauer. The first driver on this list so far who didn't make it to F1. The German spent under a year in the Red Bull Junior team in 2012. Now there's very little information out there on him, as he doesn't have a Wikipedia page and his F1 fandom page looks like this. There is, however, an article from Formula Scout labelling him the new Sebastian Vettel and an interview on the Red Bull website. Wackerbauer started in the Formula BMW Talent Cup in 2011, which he absolutely dominated by winning 15 out of 17 races. Insane. The other race winners, I hear you ask? Well, it was none other than Max Günther, who won the other 2 races that Wackerbauer didn't. He competed in the Euro Cup Formula Renault 2.0 Championship in 2012 and did okay, finishing 11th overall. He beat his teammate Esteban Ocon, but they both got demolished by their other teammate Daniil Kvyat, who won the title. Marco had seen enough and dropped him from the programme as a result of this. Wackerbauer wasn't able to find a full-time drive until 2015, where he competed in the ADAC GT Masters Championship alongside Kelvin van der Linde. They achieved a race win and finished 14th overall. This was Wackerbauer's last drive in motorsport, as it appears he now works in logistics. The next driver is Lewis Williamson. The British driver didn't spend very long in the Red Bull Junior team. 5 races. He lasted 5 races in the team during 2012. Williamson started single-seaters full-time in 2009 in Formula Renault UK, finishing 10th. He remained in the series for 2010 and narrowly missed out on the championship to Tom Blomqvist by just 6 points. Williamson finished above some strong drivers such as future F1 driver Will Stevens and future WEC hypercar drivers Alex Lynn and Harry Tinknell. These efforts were enough for Lewis to be awarded the prestigious BRDC award, fending off future IndyCar drivers Jack Harvey and Tom Blomqvist for it. Williamson moved up to GP3 for 2011 and did pretty well, finishing 11th and beating his teammate Mitch Evans. He went back to GP3 for 2012 but only joined for the second half of the season, but still managed to finish 17th overall. He stayed in GP3 again for 2013, but this time could only manage a 12th place finish in the standings. Williamson wasn't able to secure a full-time drive until 2017 after this, where he switched over to GT racing, which is where he has been since, and been pretty good at it too, achieving a couple of GT championships. The next driver is Antonio Felix da Costa. The Portuguese driver was signed to the Red Bull Junior team in 2012 as a replacement in the academy for the previously mentioned Lewis Williamson. Da Costa started single-seaters in 2008 in Formula Renault 2.0 NEC, where he finished as runner-up to Valtteri Bottas. Da Costa then decided to return to the championship again for 2009, so obviously with a decision like that, you've got to win the championship. Correct. Da Costa won the championship in dominating fashion ahead of runner-up Kevin Magnussen. He also competed in Eurocup Formula Renault 2.0, accomplishing a very impressive 3rd in the standings. For 2010, Da Costa moved up to the Formula 3 Euro Series and impressed yet again. He finished 7th in the standings, the highest placed rookie with 3 wins. The Portuguese driver also took part in the F1 Young Drivers Test for Force India that year. For sure, he was on many F1 teams' radar by this point. Da Costa switched over to GP3 for 2011, but didn't quite have the year he wanted. 13th in the standings and finished behind his teammate Alex Sims. So Da Costa remained in GP3 again for 2012, this time with Carlin. It was a much better campaign for Da Costa, as he finished 3rd this time behind his future Formula E competitors Mitch Evans and Daniel Abt. Da Costa also won the historic and prestigious Macau Grand Prix at the end of the year, further showcasing his talent. This was also the year he was signed up to the Red Bull Junior team, so his F1 dreams were looking more within touching distance now. For 2013, Da Costa switched over to Formula Renault 3.5 and had an impressive campaign, finishing 3rd in the championship. Usually that could be enough for Helmut Marko to give the driver the nod to race in F1 the following year. However, Antonio revealed that he received a phone call from Mr. Marko at the end of the year saying he will not be racing in F1. His dreams were crushed. It was a classic case of wrong place, wrong time for Da Costa, as he was overlooked for Daniil Kvyat instead, who had just come off the back of winning back-to-back championships. So it would be hard to ignore Kvyat in this scenario, and by the time 2015 came by, Da Costa had already been casted away for a Toro Rosso seat, as the younger options of Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz were more admirable to Mr. Marko. Da Costa served as a test and reserve driver during 2014 and 2015 for Red Bull, but ended up leaving the Red Bull family and F1 at the end of 2015. Antonio switched to sports cars and DTM for 2014, but had a rough time as he finished 21st in the standings. He did a further 2 seasons of DTM and improved, achieving a race win and several podiums, but couldn't finish any higher in the standings than 11th. Da Costa found his groove though in the all-new electric racing series Formula E in 2014. He was a part of the first ever season of it, and it's where he still is to this current date. 142 races, 12 wins, 27 podiums, 8 pole positions, and 1 world championship. Da Costa is one of the best ever drivers for sure in Formula E's short history. Whilst Formula E has been his main priority, Antonio has also been competing in endurance racing. He's entered Le Mans 7 times, which includes a win in class in 2022 for Jota, which is also the year he won the LMP2 championship. Da Costa has raced in the LMP2 class for the majority of his endurance career, but he did have a brief stint in a hypercar for Jota in 2023. I'd just like to quickly announce that I've just created a Twitter account so I can spread more truth and chat to more of you. So everyone, go and follow. The next driver is Callum O'Keeffe. The South African driver joined the Red Bull Junior team in 2012 during his debut year of single-seaters. O'Keeffe was competing in the Formula BMW Talent Cup and had a pretty tricky year, finishing 9th in the championship. He moved up to the ADAC Full-Male Masters Championship for 2013, but struggled again, finishing 13th overall. It was at the end of the year where he left Red Bull. Callum then spent the next 2 years in 2014 and 2015 racing in both Formula Renault 2.0 NEC and Eurocup Formula Renault 2.0, where he could only manage a best finish of 7th in the standings. He couldn't find a full-time drive in 2016, but did compete in the British F3 Autumn Trophy, where he impressively finished 3rd in the standings, ahead of Dan Ticktum and Marcus Armstrong. For 2017, O'Keeffe secured a drive in British F3 and did fairly well, finishing 6th. He then went without a drive until 2019, where the South African driver took part in the first half of Formula Renault Eurocup. This was his last action in a race car, as he is now retired and runs a driver development program. The next driver is Tom Blomqvist. The British driver joined the programme for 2013 during his second season of European FIF3, but before this, Tom had been racing single-seaters already for a few years. So let's go back to the start. Blomqvist started single-seaters in 2009 in Formula Renault 2.0 Sweden. Makes sense, as he's part Swedish. Tom finished 3rd in the standings. Who did he lose out in the championship to, I hear you ask? Well, it was Felix Rosenqvist, obviously. Blomqvist then competed in Formula Renault UK for 2010, which he only went and won, fending off previously mentioned Red Bull Junior, Lewis Williamson. In 2011, Blomqvist took part in German F3 and had a decent campaign, finishing 6th overall, despite missing the final 2 rounds of the season due to breaking his back. Tom had a jam-packed 2012 as he competed in German F3 again, as well as the Formula 3 Euro Series and the first ever season of European FIF3. He had another fairly solid year, with 5th in German F3 and 7th in both the Formula 3 Euro Series and European FIF3. Blomqvist would have finished higher up in the German F3 standings had he competed in the full campaign after he missed 4 whole rounds to prioritise his other championships. His back break from the year before clearly shows that he wasn't as high up the order as he should be and where he could be. It was after this year where Blomqvist was signed up to the Red Bull Junior team for 2013 after he left the McLaren driver development programme. He returned to the FIA F3 European Championship, but yet again finished 7th. Red Bull again showed their lack of patience and did not keep Blomqvist for 2014. During that year, Tom competed for a 3rd time in European FIF3, and this time he was fully able to demonstrate his talent. He finished as runner-up behind Esteban Ocon, but did beat a certain young Dutch driver who was making his full debut in single-seaters in 3rd place. Blomqvist then switched from single-seaters to sports cars in DTM for 2015. He did 3 years of this and achieved a best result of 6th overall in the championship. Over these years, Blomqvist also took part in many GT races here and there. Tom struggled to find a full-time drive until 2019, where he competed in IMSA in the GT class. He entered his first Le Mans in 2020 in the GTE AM class, but he didn't finish the race. Blomqvist again couldn't find another full-time drive until later on in 2021, where he competed in Formula E. He had taken part in a few FE races before this, but that didn't help him to prepare for this season. He finished 24th in the standings in his absolute Neo tractor. Blomqvist then went back to sports cars and competed in WEC with Jota Sport in LMP2. They managed to finish as runners-up that year in the standings and in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Blomqvist went back to IMSA to compete full-time there in 2022, this time with Meyer Shank in the prototype class. It went pretty well this time as they managed to win the championship, including a win at Daytona. Blomqvist returned again with Meyer Shank in IMSA for 2023 and achieved his 2nd Daytona win at the start of the year. They couldn't quite win the championship again this year, but got close with 3rd overall. With help from his impressive performances for Meyer Shank in IMSA, Tom made his IndyCar debut in 2023 with Meyer Shank at Toronto, but crashed out on his debut. He made 2 further appearances in the final 2 rounds of the season and was subsequently announced to be driving the number 66 car full-time for 2024. His start to the 2024 season didn't go very well, with just 2 top 20 finishes in the opening rounds. The Indy 500 turned out to be a big turning point for Blomqvist as he crashed out on lap 1 and was then replaced for the remainder of the season by Helio Castroneves and David Malukas. Tom took part in more IMSA races for the rest of the year. Now, in 2025, Blomqvist is back in IMSA and is also competing in ELMS. The next driver is Beitske Visser. The Dutch driver joined in 2013 and became Red Bull's first ever woman to join the junior team. Visser has had a pretty long racing career to date, but it all began in 2012 for her single-seater debut in ADAC Full-Male Masters. She had a pretty strong rookie year, claiming 2 victories and a pole position on her way to 8th in the championship, despite breaking her back in Zandvoort. This meant she missed just the 1 round after this to recover, as well as another later round at the Nürburgring. Visser did a 2nd year in the championship in 2013, this time with the backing of Red Bull. Unfortunately, she couldn't improve her place in the championship as she finished 8th again. Subsequently, she and Red Bull parted ways after 2013. She then did 2 years of Formula Renault 3.5 but struggled as she finished 21st and 23rd respectively. Visser then competed in the Formula V8 3.5 series in 2016 but could only finish 13th overall. She then became a BMW junior driver in 2018 and switched over to sports car racing, as well as being test and reserve driver for BMW Andretti in Formula E. In 2019, she took part in the inaugural season of W Series and finished as runner-up and one of the only real competition to Jamie Chadwick. W Series was postponed in 2020 due to the coronavirus pandemic, so Visser took part in more sports car races, including the 24 Hours of Le Mans. She returned to W Series in 2021 but struggled pretty badly compared to before as she finished 8th in the championship. Visser returned for the final season of W Series in 2022 and improved this time as she finished as runner-up for a second time and was one of only 3 drivers to claim a race win. She was not involved in the newly launched F1 Academy Championship the year after and has since been racing back in sports cars. The next driver is none other than Max Verstappen. The Dutch driver joined the Red Bull Junior team in 2014 during his debut year of single-seaters. He reportedly also had interest from Ferrari, Mercedes and Lotus as well. He chose Red Bull in the end as they were actually going to offer him an F1 seat for 2015 as opposed to Mercedes likely placing him in GP2 or Formula Renault 3.5 as well as competing with Pascal Wehrlein for an F1 seat. So fast forward 11 years and he's still debating whether to go with Red Bull or Mercedes. But back to his 2014 season, Verstappen had a fantastic rookie year in single-seaters. He took part in European F3 and finished 3rd behind Esteban Ocon and the previously mentioned Tom Blomqvist. It was a mega year for Max as he took home 10 wins, 16 podiums and 7 pole positions. He also took part in the notorious Florida Winter Series, which I don't need to say any more about. Verstappen competed in the Macau Grand Prix but could only manage a 7th place finish, holding off Santino Ferrucci 1 place behind. But not only did he beat the bigoted American, Verstappen also beat Alex Palou, who finished 16th. However, the Dutchman was beaten by Nicholas Latifi. Max also won the Masters of Zandvoort event during the year, and that pretty much sums up his junior career just like that. So as they say, the rest is history. Verstappen became the youngest F1 driver in 2015 when he made his debut in Australia at 17 years old. In fact, he pretty much holds a lot of the youngest F1 records. He won his first Grand Prix during his first race for Red Bull in 2016 after he replaced Daniil Kvyat. He won his first Drivers' World Championship in 2021 and continued to win 3 more over the next 3 years. I don't think I need to say much more about this man. The next driver is Pierre Gasly. The French driver joined the Red Bull Junior team in 2014 ahead of his first season in the Formula Renault 3.5 series. But let's go back to his debut season in single-seaters in 2011 where Gasly started in French F4. He had a very strong rookie year, finishing 3rd in the championship and won 4 of the last 5 races of the season. Pierre then competed in Eurocup Formula Renault 2.0 for 2012 and had a mixed season. He finished 10th in the standings but behind his teammate Nick de Vries. The Frenchman subsequently returned to the championship for a second season in 2013 and improved this time. He won the championship ahead of Oliver Rowland, Esteban Ocon, Jake Dennis and Nick de Vries. So Red Bull signed him up to their junior team off the back of this. Gasly entered the Formula Renault 3.5 series in 2014 and his strong form continued. The Frenchman finished as runner-up and the highest placed rookie behind fellow Red Bull junior at the time, Carlos Sainz. So whilst this earned Sainz a move up to F1, Gasly had to move to GP2 for 2015. He was at Dams and partnered with fellow Red Bull junior at the time, Alex Lynn. Gasly's debut year in GP2 went alright. He finished 8th in the championship but 2 places behind his teammate, Lynn. So Pierre returned to GP2 again for 2016 with a clear goal in mind: win the championship. And that he did. Gasly won the championship by narrowly beating his teammate Antonio Giovinazzi by just 8 points. So this should earn him a promotion to F1 with Toro Rosso, right? Wrong. Gasly had to sit on the sidelines that year as reserve driver, whilst also competing in Super Formula with Team Mugen. His campaign in Japan went really well as he finished 2nd, half a point behind the championship winner. By the way, Super Formula had some pretty big names in the championship that year, with the likes of Andre Lotterer, Felix Rosenqvist, Kazuki Nakajima, Nick Cassidy, Kamui Kobayashi, Jan Mardenborough, and Narain Kartikeyan. Gasly also made a one-off appearance in Formula E in 2017, subbing in for former Toro Rosso driver Sebastian Buemi for the New York City E-Prix. Gasly's debut went pretty well actually, as he scored points in both races of the doubleheader and nearly scored a podium in the second race before he hit the wall in the final corner and limped home in 4th. But whilst all this was going on, the previously mentioned Daniil Kvyat was underperforming in F1 and Helmut Marko had seen enough. Well, clearly not enough to sign him back over a year later. Gasly made his debut at the Malaysian Grand Prix later that year and also made 4 further appearances at the tail end of the season, but didn't score any points. Gasly raced full-time for Toro Rosso in 2018 and had a pretty good first season. He drove a fantastic race during the second round at Bahrain, coming home in 4th. He ended up scoring 29 points in total in 2018 and finished 15th overall. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo had left Red Bull ahead of 2019, leaving an opening at the main team. Gasly was subsequently signed with big shoes to fill for 2019. Unfortunately, things didn't go to plan. Pierre was pretty much out-qualified and beaten in every race by Verstappen, which led to Red Bull's typical move of demoting a driver down to the sister team. Funnily enough though, looking back, Gasly's performances weren't even that bad for today's Red Bull second driver standards. He scored 63 points in 12 races and only finished outside the points on 3 occasions, so Pierre ended up finishing the year strong at Toro Rosso, like he literally scored a podium in Brazil. Unfortunately, the Red Bull return never happened for Gasly, as he spent a further 3 years at the sister team. Although he did perform very well, he won a race at Monza. I repeat, he won a race. He also achieved a podium in 2021 at Baku and comfortably beat every teammate he was put up against. Gasly made it out of the Red Bull family ahead of 2023 when he joined Alpine, which is where he still is today. He scored 2 podiums so far with the French team and is currently in the middle of a second seat problem at the team. And the final driver is Alex Lynn. The British driver joined the programme in 2014 ahead of his first season in GP3. But before this, let me go through his junior career before he joined the Austrian Energy Drinks junior racing team. Lynn made his full debut in single-seaters in 2010 in Formula Renault UK. He had a mixed year, finishing 10th overall and behind his teammate and previously mentioned Tom Blomqvist. However, Alex competed in the Formula Renault UK Winter Series after the main championship ended, and this went pretty well for him. He won the championship, beating previously mentioned Daniil Kvyat and Carlos Sainz. So for 2011, Lynn stayed in the championship and only went and won the whole thing, fending off competition from that season's runner-up Oliver Rowland. Alex progressed up to British F3 for 2012 and had another solid year. He finished 4th in the championship, beating Sainz again, but did get beaten by one of his teammates. Lynn did compete in his first Macau Grand Prix later that year and finished an impressive 3rd. 2013 was a huge year for Alex Lynn. He started off the year entering the Toyota Racing Series during the off-season. Lynn finished as runner-up behind Nick Cassidy. So Alex was in strong form going to the main season, where he competed in the FIA F3 European Championship with Prema Racing. He impressively ended up finishing 3rd with 3 wins, 14 podiums and 5 poles. He also took part in the Masters of F3 event at Zandvoort, where he came 2nd in it. At the end of the year, Lynn entered the Macau Grand Prix again, with strong aspirations this time round, and his great form continued as Alex only went and won the race ahead of the previously mentioned Antonio Felix da Costa. I feel like every driver I'm talking about now is a previously mentioned one. Alex's Mega 2013 was huge, as Red Bull signed him up to their junior team as a result of it. For 2014, Lynn entered GP3 for his first season, and he went and won the championship. Lynn's junior career thus far is honestly pretty impressive. However, at the beginning of 2015, Lynn left the Red Bull junior team for a role as a Williams development driver instead. Apparently this was due to Red Bull not being able to give him a potential F1 seat within 2 years, and Williams presented a much better option. So Lynn moved up to GP2 for 2015 with Dams, alongside, previously mentioned Pierre Gasly. Lynn got the better of Gasly and impressively finished 6th in the standings with 2 wins. Alex remained in GP2 for 2016 with Dams again, but couldn't improve in his rookie year and finished 6th again. He did obliterate his teammate Nicholas Latifi though, who finished 16th. Ahead of 2017, Lynn left Williams as he looked to further his racing career. He raced in some WEC and IMSA races, including 24 Hours of Le Mans. Lynn also made his Formula E debut in New York for DS Virgin, where he actually qualified it on pole. He unfortunately retired from the race though. For the following year, Lynn secured a full-time seat in Formula E with DS Virgin Racing. He finished 16th overall, but didn't stay for the following year. He managed to get drives for the second half of the next 2 seasons with Jaguar and Mahindra respectively. Mahindra was so impressed that they kept him on for 2021, where he even managed to win a race, but ultimately that was Lynn's last drive in Formula E. Alex found more success in sports cars though, as he's consistently competed in WEC and IMSA over the years. Lynn has entered Le Mans 9 times and qualified on Hyperpole at the recent one. Alex moved up to the hypercar class in 2023 for the first time with Cadillac Racing, which is where he still is today. So that has been all the Red Bull Junior team members from 2010 to 2014 and where they are now. Crazy how most of these drivers have gone on to have a long successful racing career, while some didn't even make it at all. So with all that being said, do subscribe, do leave a like and a comment, and I'll see you all later. And do follow me on Twitter.